For thousands of years, the galaxy believed it understood the nature of strength. Strength was measured in fleets that could blot out stars, in armies that marched without fear, in empires that crushed resistance before it had time to breathe. Across the spiral arms of the Milky Way, species rose and fell by a single rule. Power belonged to those who could hold territory, those who could defend a line, and in that endless calculus of conquest, humanity was never considered a contender, not by the great empires, not by the ancient coalitions, and certainly not by the Vaelthar Dominion. The Vaelthar were not merely conquerors. They were the architects of conquest itself. Tall, silver-skinned beings with luminous eyes and elongated limbs, they had evolved on a world where survival demanded relentless aggression. Their society had perfected war long before most civilizations discovered electricity. By the time humanity launched its first crewed satellites into orbit, the Vaelthar had already burned through 3 rival civilizations. Their fleets were legendary, their generals were feared. Their doctrine was simple: advance, overwhelm a race. And when the Dominion set its sights on a region of space, no one expected resistance to last long, especially not from Earth. Humanity had only recently joined the Galactic Coalition. Their technology was respectable. Their diplomacy was surprisingly effective. But when it came to war, short-lived, emotionally volatile. Their militaries were small compared to the galactic powers. Their ships were sturdy but unremarkable. Their soldiers brave but undisciplined. Even their allies doubted them, especially when the Dominion arrived. The invasion began without ceremony. One moment, the outer sensors of Coalition space detected gravitational disturbances near the Perseus corridor. The next moment, Vaelthar warships emerged from hyperspace, thousands of them. Black, blade-shaped vessels stretching across the void like a swarm of predators. Within hours, 3 border systems fell. Planetary defenses collapsed in minutes. Orbital stations were reduced to drifting debris. Civilizations that had stood for centuries were erased in a single day. The Dominion didn't negotiate, they didn't threaten. They simply advanced, system by system, planet by planet, and every fleet sent to stop them was destroyed. Coalition Command watched the maps change in silence, red markers spreading like a disease across the stars. Every strategist knew the truth. The Dominion wasn't raiding, they were conquering, and nothing had ever stopped them before. But then the invasion reached a quiet, unremarkable region of space. A place known only as the Ardent Line, a narrow corridor between 2 unstable nebulae. One of the few navigable routes leading deeper into Coalition territory. Whoever controlled that corridor controlled the war. The Coalition's best fleets had already been destroyed. The remaining forces were scattered, exhausted, retreating. Someone had to hold the line, even if only for a few days. Just long enough for the inner systems to prepare. Just long enough for evacuation fleets to escape. But no one volunteered, not the Talarian Armada, not the Hesh Collective, not even the ancient war clans of Vokar. Every strategist understood the reality. Holding that corridor meant facing the full weight of the Vaelthar Dominion. It meant certain destruction. And so the Coalition Council met in desperate silence, until one voice finally spoke, a human voice. Admiral Elias Ward of the United Earth Fleet leaned forward across the holographic war table. "We'll hold the line." The chamber erupted immediately. "You cannot be serious!" one counselor snapped. "The Dominion fleet numbers over 3,000 warships." "You have, what, 50? Ward nodded calmly. 58. A ripple of disbelief spread through the chamber. A Talarian commander let out a bitter laugh. "You won't hold the line, Admiral. You'll disappear." Ward didn't argue. He simply studied the map. The glowing red wave of Dominion ships advancing closer to the corridor. Then he said quietly, "Maybe, but we'll make them stop." Rising conflict. The Ardent Line was not a place built for war. It was a corridor of quiet stars squeezed between 2 massive nebulae, beautiful, silent, and deadly. Radiation storms churned through the gas clouds on either side, making navigation outside the corridor nearly impossible. For any fleet entering that region of space, there was only one path forward, one narrow road through the stars, which meant something very simple. If someone held that road, the Dominion would have to fight through them. And that was exactly what the human fleet intended. When Admiral Ward's ships arrived, the corridor was empty. Just distant starlight cold vacuum, and the slow glow of the nebula walls on either side. 58 ships spread out across the void. Compared to the Dominion fleet, they were insignificant. Small destroyers, heavy cruisers, a few aging carriers. Nothing legendary, nothing galaxy-shaking. Just human ships. Ships that had once patrolled trade lanes, protected colonies, escorted refugees. Now they were about to face the most feared armada in the galaxy. Inside the Coalition command network, observers watched the deployment with quiet disbelief. One Vokar strategist muttered softly, "They will not survive the first hour." Even human allies weren't optimistic. But something about the way the fleet moved caught their attention. It wasn't frantic, it wasn't desperate. The ship settled into formation with steady precision. Defensive positions, crossfire zones. Mine layers deployed along the outer approaches. Long-range artillery cruisers positioned behind the main line. It looked deliberate, calculated, as if this wasn't a last stand, but a plan. Hours passed. Then days, and finally, the Dominion arrived. Sensors across the corridor lit up simultaneously. Hundreds, then thousands. Veilthar warships pouring out of hyperspace like an avalanche. Coalition observers gasped. Even after weeks of invasion, the scale of the Dominion fleet was still terrifying. 3,000 ships, each one armed for planetary annihilation. And at the center of it all, the Dominion flagship, a massive dreadnought known as the Unending Blade. Inside that ship stood High Commander Rethkal, the architect of the invasion, a warrior whose victories had reshaped entire sectors of the galaxy. Rethkal studied the tactical display in silence. His officers waited, then one of them spoke. "Commander, the defensive force in the corridor has been identified." Rethkal tilted his head slightly. Species? Human. A quiet pause filled the command deck. Then several officers laughed. Humans? Is that all the Coalition has left? The officer continued. 58 ships, Commander." Another ripple of amusement spread through the room. Rethkal finally spoke. "Have they requested surrender terms?" "No, Commander." Another pause. Then Rethkal asked a simple question. "Have they moved?" The officer checked again. "No, they are holding position." The commander stared at the display for several long seconds. A thin line of human ships blocking the corridor. Outnumbered 50 to 1, completely surrounded by empty space. Waiting, Rethkal's voice carried quiet curiosity. "They know we are here?" "Yes, Commander." "And they remain?" "Yes." Another silence. Then the commander gave the order, "Advance." Across the corridor, human sensors screamed warnings. The Dominion fleet was moving. 3,000 warships accelerating toward the defensive line. A tidal wave of destruction. Inside the human flagship Resolute, Admiral Ward watched the tactical display carefully. His bridge crew stood tense but focused. No panic, just quiet readiness. One officer finally spoke. "Sir, they're advancing," Ward nodded. "Of course they are," another officer asked quietly. "Permission to retreat, Admiral?" Ward shook his head. "Negative." Outside the viewport, distant stars shimmered beyond the forming Dominion fleet. Ward leaned back slightly in his chair. Then he spoke the words that would echo across the galaxy. "Hold the line." And in that moment, the most impossible battle in modern galactic history began.